And there we go.
Hey, everybody. It is live time again. A new week, new opportunities to learn from some of the greatest. We've got Dr. Terry Cullen here today, and it's going to be awesome because she's going to teach you all kinds of cool stuff. Terry, take it away.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead. Am I showing my PowerPoint for everybody?
You're not yet.
Oh, I'm not. Let me go back and do that real quick. Well, hey, you always start it with a technical issue, That's the way to do it.
It's a Monday.
It is a Monday.
There we go. Okay, you're all good.
All right, here we go. Now, are you seeing the whole big screen?
Yep, we're all good.
Great deal. Okay, so when I was talking with the people at Canvas, I started to realize that things are starting to calm down a little bit, and that what we really need to be doing is to start to be thinking ahead. I'm at the University of Oklahoma, and we've used Canvas for the last several years. And I'm starting to realize that we need to be thinking about what's coming. There's conversations. We know that we're going to be online this summer. We may be online for part of the fall. And so we really need to be thinking about how we can leverage our tools to do a great job. I was talking just before we started that, there's been some lawsuits and things with students saying that this wasn't the education they signed up for. And we are all scrambling, and I am seeing faculty do things that is really out of their comfort zone, and it's amazing. But when we're looking to the future, we need to really kind of be planning. And so I want to give you some assistance and some thinking about the instructional design that goes into planning an online course. So maybe as you're planning to put your course in summer or put your course in fall, you can be thinking about it. So I'm going to suggest you grab a piece of paper for this presentation, because I really want you to be thinking about your own courses and maybe jotting some ideas down as you go. But I'm going to talk about my own course and give you a little bit of background of kind of how I'm thinking and what I'm doing. So I immediately thought about the phrase, never waste the opportunity offered by a good crisis. And it actually, I always want to make sure I give the citation to the right person. A lot of people say Winston Churchill said it, but it was actually Machiavelli. And when we think about never wasting an opportunity, this crisis, things are starting to calm down. And I know some of you watching this video are probably thinking, she's nuts that she's saying, let's start planning for the future. I'm just making it through the week. But you're learning a lot, and I don't want to waste that opportunity of self-reflection. One of the things when our campus switched to Canvas, I want to say it was about 4 years ago, one of the support things that they did was offering to take all of our courses that were in another LMS and make copies of them and send them over to Canvas. And I said, don't do that for me, because it was an opportunity for me to think about how I could do it new and how I could clean it up. And it really allowed me to clean up my course and to make it kind of go back to where it needed to be. And if I would have just copied over the contents from the former LMS into Canvas, I wouldn't have been able to leverage all the tools that were available and all the different ways in which I could interact with my students. So this may be a little bit about how much home and garden television I'm watching that this occurred to me, but I was thinking about our courses in the future, that we really need to be thinking about it like they do a home renovation. And if you want to redo the kitchen, you take it down to the studs and you start over. And I know that may seem like a scary idea when we're talking about our courses, but this is a great opportunity to go back to the basics with your course. So I have this going on right now for me. I teach a technology integration course for future educators at the undergraduate. I also teach graduate level, but our undergraduate course, we offer 3 to 4 sections each fall, 3 to 4 sections each spring, and then 1 or 2 sections in the summer. And so now we have had to take our summer course and place it online. I know there's lots of other places that offer technology integration online, but we haven't done it because we kind of like to have the students be able to play with the robots and the other things that we want to do. But in the end, it really comes down to the course objectives. So what I want you to do is just think about your course and what is it that you want the students to learn in the course? What do you want them to learn in the course so they can be successful in other classes that are part of their program? What do you want them to be able to do by the time the class is over? What do you want your students to be able to achieve? And then in my class, I also, since it's a very practical class about how to use technology in teaching, I actually think about levels of exposure, mastery, and expertise. So for example, augmented and virtual reality, I want them to be exposed to it and know the different things that are there. Maybe programming, I want them to be exposed to what's involved with programming, but we don't have enough time to have them master it or be an expert in it. And so when we think about those skills, we might also think that way. So when we're thinking about that foundation of our course, the first thing we want to say is don't get fixated on what you've always done. Take this as an opportunity to look at it fresh. One of the things that I found is my course, I have a real problem with I add and add and add and add, and I don't often thin it on out. And so a couple years ago, I sat down with my department chair, and she knew nothing about my course, and we just were able to talk through what were the key things that I wanted my students to do. And right now I'm talking with the instructors who teach my course, and we're talking about what's extra, what could we thin out, what doesn't match our overall objectives. Now, if you don't have objectives for your course, this is a great time to write them. I tend towards Mager style objectives, which Robert Mager, you can look up. There's lots of guides on how to write these, where you say, given a condition, the students will be able to do something and to a certain level. So like after completing this course, the students will be able to do something to a level. I'll give you an example on the next slide. Am I doing all right there, Mark?
I'd say you're nailing it.
All right. So we're going to head back to those objectives. So when you come back down to the objectives, you want to brainstorm how students will be able to meet them. And so since my course is really practical, it deals with current technologies. So here's an example from my course that I'll use as my example throughout. After this course, my students will be able to make an argument for or against teaching computer science in their classroom using at least 3 sources. So when I look at that, I think, okay, what are these sources that students are going to use? So that goes back to my reading assignments. One of the things that we want to think about those reading assignments is, do we have the right to share them in an online site? Are they readily available to students? Could there be an open access reading or something through our university libraries that we could have students read instead to allow them to save money and keep the topic current? So this would be a great place for you to reach out to your librarian and say, hey, can you help me maybe look at my readings? I can update them. Think about that. Or the next thing that you want to think about is, if this is my objective about how students can make an argument for or against teaching computer science, how can they show that they met that objective? What are ways that they can show that they can make that argument? So if we look here on those objectives, I brainstorm some ideas. So the easy one is I can have them write a paper. I could also have them make take a multiple choice quiz. But some of the other things that I've done in my class before for this objective is I had them write a letter to their fictional superintendent of the future. I've actually had them also write a congressman. I've had them make a graphic to share on social media that talks about computer science in the classroom. I've had them have an online debate. I've had them make videos to share on social media about the topic. And then since my students are future teachers, I've also had them write a lesson plan that incorporates computer science concepts as an example that they could show someone to make their argument. So that was just like a brainstorm of all the different things. I only have one objective. I don't have to have them do all these things, but I could pick one of them. So if you're already familiar, probably many of you are, with Bloom's taxonomy. And Bloom's taxonomy talks about the sophistication of the task that you're asking students to do. So at the bottom of the pyramid, we have remembering. That would be like a multiple choice test or listing off vocabulary. And then it moves up to having them do things like apply it to a new situation, or analyzing, breaking down pros and cons. And then the ultimate is creating something. So if we go back to this, list, you can see that some of these are pretty low level on Bloom's taxonomy. Taking a multiple choice quiz, depending on what the directions are for the paper, that could be very low level as well. But then things like creating a video or making a graphic is something that could really allow students to use their creativity and to pull a lot of different information together. And that would move them up Bloom's taxonomy. So after I've thought about what's available and what kind of task I'm asking, then I want you to think about your LMS. Notice we haven't talked about what we've always done. We're just thinking, hey, what's possible? Like, this is a moment of possibility. So think about what are things in Canvas that you really like. So like, honestly, once I learned SpeedGrader, I was like, this is going to save the day for me. Like, I love SpeedGrader. So assignments that I can have graded through SpeedGrader are awesome. And you can do that with graphics. You can do that with written papers. You can do that with PDFs. So there's lots of things I can use that with. And so that's going through my head. The other thing is I think about what students like. Some of my students aren't the biggest fan of discussion forums. And so I'm going to think about how I can structure that activity and also how I can use it in a way that students might like it. Or maybe I'll pay a lot of attention to other tools that are very popular with students. Also, I like to think about at this moment, is there something that I've heard about that I'd like to learn? For example, Edpuzzle has a plugin that allows you to plug into Canvas, and that's a tool I'm not currently using. So maybe this would be a good time to go look and see what that does. Or maybe you want to learn about Nearpod or Flipgrid. Those are all LTI integrations within Canvas. This would be a good time to maybe challenge yourself to learn something and model that for your students. So then I would kind of look and make some notes about Canvas and where you could use and help students to complete the tasks that you like. And then it's also, right now would be a great time to reach out to instructional designers or the Canvas support team at your school, or maybe even former students. When we started the iPad at the Janine Rainbolt College of Education, our project where all students were given iPads, the very first semester, what we did is took seniors in our program and had them work with faculty. They had already completed their classes, and those students were able to say, you know, this assignment would work really well on the iPad, or this assignment could be done this way. And since they'd already had the class, they weren't worried, like, I'm going to, you know, upset the professor, or they have my grade later. Instead, they were able to be honest and share their experiences and work collaboratively with the professor to make those changes. Students would love that opportunity. I have a link here, and by the way, I'll have a link to this whole slide deck at the end. But if you go onto the Canvas community, you'll find that there's a series of guides about all the different tools and different things that you can do with Canvas. This would be a great moment to just kind of go look around in the Canvas community and start to pick up on tools that you might be able to use. So I'm going back to those objectives I wrote, to the objective that I wrote about computer science education. And so then I go back to the tasks that I'd come up with. So one, for example, is write a paper. And if I look at the Canvas tool, I can use SpeedGrader. I can have the students do peer review. I can use the Google or Microsoft tool integrations. Those are all different things I can do. The same are available for writing a letter to a fictional superintendent. And then I can make a graphic to share, and that could use SpeedGrader and peer review, and also some Adobe tools. Having an online debate can be done via discussion forums, and there's lots of examples in the Canvas community of how people do this. And then also I can have them take a quiz. Now, if you haven't figured out already, I'm not a quiz kind of professor. I'm very much project-based. But if that's what you do, there's some really powerful quiz tools that are found in Canvas that you could use to help achieve that goal.
Terry?
Yeah, sorry. Yes, great.
Let's pause really quick. So there's been some great comments. Janaya Jones, who's been with us before, welcome back, Janaya, talked about the studio integration. She's a big fan. She thinks her students like it. For some reason, they really like making videos. I imagine you're seeing the same thing with yours.
Definitely, yes.
Okay, talk to me. Looked like Corinne Caruso had a question about outcomes. He says, I came in a bit late, but when I create outcomes for my course, How can I then see at the end of the semester the percentage of students that actually met those outcomes?
Okay, so a great way that you can do that is actually most of the tools for assignments in Canvas include rubrics. And so this is again about a planning kind of moment. And so what you could do is look at those outcomes that you have and create a rubric before you even get an assignment in on it, which are what are the key components of those outcomes that you would like to see students achieve. Then you can share those rubrics within the assignments. And at the end, you will have shareable data about how they have achieved those goals or those outcomes.
Terry, one other question from Corinne. Yep. How does she connect a quiz or homework question to the actual outcome?
A quiz or a homework question to the actual outcome. I do not. So there's an outcome tool, right, in Canvas. Am I right, Mark?
Yeah, there is.
Yes, that is not a tool I use. So I'm just going to be straight with that. But we had a video earlier on that, didn't we?
I think, Corinne, why don't you send a note to mark.booth. I'll put it in the pod. Shoot me a note and I can get you some information.
Right. And I'm also going to share links to our other videos at the end. I don't want to lead her astray because it's not a tool that I use. And so again, though, let me suggest also asking that question in the Canvas community. I am just absolutely floored how if I have a question and I ask to some of the experienced users of Canvas, how quickly I'll get a response in 5 different ways to do it. Have we answered most of the questions we have right now, Mark?
Yeah, I think we're good. I gave Corinne my information. So go ahead, Corinne, shoot me a note and I can get you info. I'm not familiar either with anything outcomes, so I'll get you some info.
Great. So yes, and this is the one thing to remember about Canvas, and let me kind of go back to this. So we have all these different tools. We all have our own way of doing things and things that we like doing. So like, for example, I know a lot of people that when students make videos, they like to upload them as an assignment in Canvas. Or they want to use Canvas Studio. But I actually really like Flipgrid, which is an LTI integration. And the one thing that I always stress to my students when I'm teaching about technology integration, it is not about doing what everyone else is doing. It's about creating a workflow that you can live with and that makes you more productive. And so, one of the things that question is a great illustration. There are things that I use in Canvas and there's things that I don't because it's not part of my workflow and we teach different kinds of courses. So if you get something that's working for you, go with it. Even if someone says, oh my gosh, you should be using outcomes. I'm like, you know what? That doesn't really work for me in my setting, but I'm going to use these other things. I'm going to grade by points, or I'm going to allow students to use badging with Badger, sorry. And, that's okay. You do not have to be using what everybody else is doing, because in this situation, we definitely don't want to keep up with the Joneses. And that's something I always want to encourage others to think about. Like, if you got what you're doing works, just keep going with it, because you're going to be a more effective teacher and a more comfortable teacher. So the last thing I wanted to talk a little bit about is something that I'm using to kind of plan my courses a little bit. And I want to give you this as a resource. There's a group at the University of Central Oklahoma. I'm at the University of Oklahoma. It's led by Dr. Bucky Dodd. And what he's doing is it's called the Learning Environment Design. And they have developed a series of tools to help you design a course, be it face-to-face, be it online, be it blended, or a combination of all of that. And what they do is they go down and they take the course so that you can streamline it into just its basic components. And so they look at, how are you giving information? How are you encouraging students to talk with each other and build community in your class? How do you give feedback to students? So we're talking about formative feedback in the middle. How do you give them practice? How do you let them practice the skill to show that they know it? And then finally, how do they give evidence? And how do they make sure that you see that evaluation that they've done? They have a series of tutorials online that they've put online as part of kind of their response to the COVID crisis. And I really want to encourage you. The materials are free. They do ask for your information so they can follow up with you, but you can go to this website and they will walk you through a process of streamlining your course and going back to the objectives and looking at what the outcomes are you want to achieve. So I think the big thing I'd like people to take away is, we can emerge from this crisis better than we were before. We can take a little bit of time to redesign our courses. It'll renew our focus. It'll streamline our programs. And we can also think about how we can apply new learning in Canvas and new possibilities to engage students. The truth of the matter is that now is the time for us to think about the possibilities, because we can be better teachers. We can use the tools provided to us better. And in the end, by spending a little time thinking about it now, I believe that we will save ourselves time and create a better learning experience. So this is my information. And you're more than welcome to reach out to me on Twitter. People reached out to me after the last presentation. Also, this presentation is available as bit.ly/Canvas time if you want the links that I talked about. And then finally, all of the presentations that we've been doing as a group since the COVID crisis began are available on the Instructure website. So that was kind of my ideas, Mark.
Yeah, I just dropped that link into the chat for everybody. A couple of other comments. Kashwan Hopkins, who I know has been on here as well.
He's actually one of my students.
Oh, look at that.
So is he heckling?
No heckling at all. He's doing good. Give him some extra credit.
Yeah.
Because I'm not sure if I missed her saying it already, but I wanted to also recommend that Canvas has video guides as a companion to the articles too.
Yeah, definitely. I would say that there's a link that I provided about halfway through that was to the Canvas guides, and you can easily get those as well. I think the real thing that I really want people to do, and I realize that, I said to Mark when we were planning this presentation, I see all these things like if you don't develop your side hustle during the COVID crisis, and I'm thinking, I was excited to get up this morning and actually, like do my hair, like that was exciting. And I had someone say to me yesterday, we're taking a drive around in our car. This is so cool. And so I'm not trying to say that I think that you should, like this, that you're going to be the most productive you've ever been. But what I'm trying to say is that we know that this could happen again. And so let's take some time to be thoughtful and think about the things that we're using that are successful and leverage those to create an even better experience.
Let's jump back real quick, Terry. So Corinne Caruso, I hope you're still on.
Yeah.
So a couple of thoughts there from one of our community leads. She came back and told me, it's a little bit of a complicated question because it depends on whether you're using the old classic quizzes or the new quizzes. So yeah, we have outcomes, but the workflows vary a little bit. So best thing to do, search for the type of quiz that you're using, go into the community, whether it's new quizzes or not, and outcomes. If you don't find an existing Q&A that addresses that question, then you can post one on your own, and the community will be super, super good at getting you feedback really quickly.
So one more thing I'll just add, and I kind of just touched on it too, is like this is a great time to reach out to the instructional designers or the Canvas administrator on your campus and sit down with them and say, like a perfect example, I sat down with my instructor and there were some things in our class that I said, wow, there are too many moving parts. Once we put this online, we're asking them to do this little thing and that little thing. And it all of a sudden became really obvious to me that I needed to make some changes. And this would be a great time. I know that as a person who supports others using technology, I could, like I would love it if someone said, hey, Terry, could we sit down and brainstorm about a way we can handle this kind of assignment or this kind of objective? This is a great time to do that. And I would love to not be putting out a fire. I would love to be able to like sit and have that conversation because I know in the end, that's going to just really help to make the course a better experience.
I might call out to Terry that Kashwan wants to make sure you know that your hair looks really amazing. Kashwan, hey, there is a part where we go too far. That extra part has now been taken off. I'm sorry. But thanks for coming nonetheless.
That's great.
Everybody, we've been here with Dr. Terry today talking about how to prepare for the future with Canvas LMS, whether that means going into fall semester, having to do it potentially, or whatever comes up in the future. I dropped a link in here. It's bit.ly.canvastime. Go check it out. That includes the presentation from Dr. Terry. Thanks for coming today. We're doing these almost every day. Tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. We'll see you again. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you soon.